The story of mouthwashing begins with a shot of the open void of space. We're told we are aboard a Pony Express long-haul space freighter, the Tulpar. There's a crew of 5, the voyage is expected to last 382 days, and we've been traveling for 147. And then an out-of-place message appears on the screen. Eerie, personal, and sharp. I hope this hurts. Next, a screen fades in. 0 days before the crash. We call that subtle foreshadowing in the writing business. We're in the first-person perspective and instructed to manually steer the ship toward a nearby asteroid. Doing so engages the autopilot, which instantly docks the entire crew's pay and redirects the Tulpar away from the impending catastrophe. For now. What stands out here is how cold this act feels. Not manic, not panicked. Whoever we're playing as is calmly and methodically disengaging the autopilot of the ship, damning the rest of the crew to a fiery doom. It's my belief that this is the moment when the phrase, "I hope this hurts," is spoken. And if I'm right, it's revealing. It suggests a desire not just for punishment, but shared punishment. Someone wants to hurt, yes, but also drag everyone else down with them. At first, I assumed we must be playing as the ship's captain. How else would they know how to override critical systems and initiate this slow spiral towards disaster? We'll see how that theory evolves as time goes on. After a brief nightmare sequence, nothing special, don't look into it, we awaken to a meeting held 2 months after the crash. Here we meet the surviving crew. Swansea the mechanic, Anya the nurse, Daisuke the intern, and Jimmy, the irredeemable monster, the co-pilot. The group discusses breaking into the Tulpar's cargo hold to scavenge for supplies. Swansea voices concern, but the group pushes ahead. Anya tells Jimmy that if they can locate the code scanner, they can use a backup override to access the hold. Along the way, we find Swansea posted outside the utility room. He says it's packed to the ceiling with expanding foam and warns that opening it could breach the air seal and doom the rest of the crew even faster. He's not taking any chances. We then find Anya in the medical bay, sitting beside the charred, unmoving body of Curly, the Tulpar's former captain. Anya hasn't administered his pain meds yet. She says they cause him to spasm and make horrible noises. She can't bear it. Jimmy reacts sharply, mocking her. Pony Express really knew how to cut corners hiring a nurse who can't give pills. At this point in the game, I found myself reluctantly siding with Jimmy. She's clearly struggling, yes, but asking an unqualified, untrained, and entirely unsuited man like Jimmy to treat a patient in that state? It's not fair. Not to Curly, and not to anyone. Even so, something about his reaction feels off. Too quick to snap, too eager to insult. The kind of person who's been waiting for a reason to feel superior. And it won't be the last time we see that. Jimmy's callousness towards Anya was my first real red flag. Especially considering that Anya was likely only trained in basic medical procedures, certainly not equipped to handle someone in Curly's catastrophic condition. After this exchange, we finally get a good look at the captain. There isn't a single patch of skin left unburned. His hands and feet are gone entirely, replaced by gauze. His face is scorched beyond recognition, save for one thing, his eye. Just one eye. Wild and wide and locked on to us. We manually open his blistered mouth and prepare the medication, and almost immediately, Anya is vindicated. Jimmy forces the pills down, and Curly spasms in agony, making noises that no human being should ever have to make. Afterward, Anya quietly asks Jimmy why Curly did it, why he crashed the ship. Jimmy responds coldly, "Why do you even care?" Anya's answer is simple. "I have to believe our worst moments don't make us monsters, Jim." Which for her to say in this moment to this person is incredibly important for reasons that will become clear later. Now the crew regroups at the cargo bulkhead. Jimmy enters the code, and the doors part to reveal what they risk their pay for. Thousands upon thousands of neatly stacked shipping crates. A sudden cut, 7 days before the crash. We're back in Curly's head. He's just wrapped up a psych evaluation with Anya, and though there's some light banter, we get a hint of tension. Anya's reluctant to evaluate Jimmy. She says he treats the whole process like a joke. To make her point, she says that Jimmy once told her he gets sexually excited at the sight of cartoon horses. It's clearly a joke, a stupid one, a reference to the corporate mascot of Pony Express. But the fact that he said this to Anya specifically, it leaves a bad taste, one we'll come back to. Curly offers to take Jimmy's evaluation himself. Anya agrees, relieved. Now we get a glimpse of the Tulpar before it became a death trap. It's sterile, sure, but alive, whole. There's a thin thread of warmth here before everything goes to hell. Curly finds Jimmy near the utility room, where we learn that Daisuke was a last-minute addition to the mission. Curly regrets not pushing back against corporate. He knew that the kid shouldn't have been here. Inside, Daisuke is half submerged in ceiling foam, completely stuck. With a conveniently placed axe, Curly frees him. An exasperated Swansea warns Daisuke to stay away from the vent system. It's collapsed, filled with sharp metals, dangling wires, and 100 ways to bleed out before help can arrive. Curly continues towards the cockpit, only to be swallowed by what appears to be a pain-induced nightmare. An inferno bursts before him, engulfing everything in flame. Suddenly, we snap back. Curly's conducting Jimmy's psych eval. When they finish, they have a more personal one-on-one. We get a deeper look at Jimmy here. He says he likes being co-pilot because we're in control here. We also learn that Jimmy's past on Earth was troubled, and that Curly helped him out by landing him this gig. But there's tension beneath the gratitude. Jimmy envies Curly. He sees how others look up to him, and he can't understand why Curly seems so weighed down by his role. Curly gives a vulnerable answer. Am I figured out? Is this all I'll ever be? Or do I take a risk and try something new, even if I'm bad at it? There's real doubt here, an ache for reinvention, for meaning beyond his job. And then he gets a transmission from corporate. But before we can read it, we're yanked forward in time, 2 months after the crash. Now we find out what the ship's precious cargo was. Not medicine, not food, not equipment for some sort of colony. Mouthwash. Thousands of crates of it. Everyone stands in stunned silence. Anya chimes in to say that the sugar content makes it useless even as a disinfectant. Swansea stares at one of the bottles, notes its 14% ethanol content, pops the lid, and takes a drink. Just like that, he ends 15 years of sobriety. And it kinda spoils how he feels about their situation. He doesn't think anyone's getting off the ship alive, so why bother pretending? We flash back again. Curly's perspective, 6 days before the crash. A new objective, break the news. Curly walks into the mess hall and finds the crew waiting for him. They've thrown him a surprise party, used the only company-allotted communal birthday to celebrate their captain. It's quiet. It's sweet. It's one of the last good things anyone on this ship will ever experience. The initially happy moment comes crashing down as Curly tells everyone what the message from management said. Effectively, everyone is going to be fired at the completion of their journey, and only Curly will get a sort of golden parachute to land another job. Swansea takes it with a quiet resignation. Anya, shaken, admits she has no savings to fall back on. As for Jimmy, well, I'll give you the experience I got when I streamed the game. I guess you got what you wanted, without the guilt. Jim, if I had known. I can go back to my, how'd you put it? Struggle of a life. Anya never got to medical school because she's, well, let's be real. And how many employment years Swansea got left in him? Daisuke will be fine, mommy and daddy have him covered, so there's that at least. But you, headed for bigger and better, right? I'm just working on my life being a place I don't have to fucking escape. That's what I was trying to tell you, nothing more. We're the ones you're trying to escape. Leave the dirt behind now that your boots are clean. That's not what I meant. It is what you meant. You just couldn't frame it to yourself in a way that kept you as the hero. Abandon the crew, but remain the model captain. Unbelievable. What am I supposed to do? Let's have some fucking cake, hmm? This is where Jimmy finally drops the mask of the easygoing everyman. He lashes out, not just at Curly, but at everyone, wielding the kind of cruelty that only works when there's a little truth beneath it. Swansea is nearing the end of his career, and he later admits that his best years are long behind him. Daisuke, nice as he is basically a nepo baby. This internship nothing more than his parents trying to teach him some responsibility. And Anya, whether due to temperament, intelligence, or something else, probably never had a real shot at becoming a doctor. That's the bitter truth Jimmy exploits. None of this justifies his behavior. It doesn't excuse what he's done before or what he'll do after. But in this moment, with the party ruined and the air thick with betrayal, Jimmy does what he does best. He makes sure everyone bleeds. I want to take a brief detour and make an argument that no one asked for and will likely make some people mad at me. Yes, I am a Joseph Anderson fan. How could you tell? I want to talk about Anya. There's a tendency in the mouthwashing community to paint her as someone she's not. A near superhuman nurse who single-handedly kept Curly alive despite the severity of his injuries. Some go as far to say that if only she had the money, she could have been one of the best doctors in the world. But that's probably not true. It's unlikely that financial barriers were the only thing keeping her out of medical school. In a developer interview, they revealed she didn't miss out once or twice. She applied 8 separate times and got rejected each one. Unless we assume she never thought to use Space Google to estimate the cost of applying, it's safe to say her repeated failures had more to do with aptitude than money. Some have made the claim that because Curly's alive at all, it shows how skilled she really was. But treating burns that severe requires a sterile environment, constant redressing of wounds, IVs, and all sorts of advanced medical equipment, none of which are available to them. Curly survives because the plot says he must. The same way Swansea drinks ethanol mouthwash for months, or some people mix isopropyl alcohol into cocktails without instantly poisoning their target. I get why people want to believe in Anya's brilliance. It's comforting. It reframes her failures as an injustice rather than a limitation. But at the end of the day, she's just a regular person on a ship full of regular people. Medical school is hard to get into, and not everyone who dreams of working in the field is actually cut out for it. That's what makes Jimmy's attack on her hit so hard. Some players assume that because Jimmy is cruel, everything he says must be a lie. But that's not how good villains work. They don't invent random insults. They dig into real insecurities and twist the knife. When he tore into Anya at the table, she sat in silence, ashamed. And that silence says more than any counter-argument ever could. I don't think Anya is dumb. Just an average nurse. She's not the best in her field, and she probably never could have been. If the devs wanted to prove otherwise, they could have given us more dialogue emphasizing her medical skill, showing how she kept Curly alive despite all odds. Instead, they show us her doubt. And that's what makes her so tragically relatable. The writers could have let her be empowered, vindicated, made her a secret genius whose talent went unrecognized, but they didn't. They let her be a normal person with a dream they'll never achieve, and that's what makes it real. We awaken 2 months after the crash to the haunting sounds of Curly screaming, and when we go to look for Anya, we find her and Swansea chatting in the ruined cockpit. Anya has apparently been crying, and Swansea seems a little more hostile than usual. Nevertheless, Jimmy once again takes on the duty of administering Curly's medicine, although this time, Anya seemed willing to do it herself. Jimmy looms over Curly, remarking that he knows how everyone is looking at him, and questions what she would do. This is another instance where we get hints that something must have happened between Jimmy and Anya, but it's not yet clear what. Then, in a sudden turn, Jimmy directs his anger at Curly, saying, "I hope these make you feel fucking better." He then pops open the pill bottle and, from the sound of it, begins to beat Curly before forcing the pills down his scorched throat. This is a stark departure from what we've seen from Jimmy before. He's gone from being a snarky asshole into a full-blown abuser, taking out his rage on his defenseless former friend who's already in agonizing pain. It shines a hideous light on their conversation during Jimmy's psych eval, where he mentioned how he liked to be in control. We now see what he does with said control. As Jimmy turns away, we enter another nightmare sequence. The burnt Curly and Jimmy sit at the mess hall table, looking at the shitty cake the company offers. They have an oddly normal conversation about making do with the hand that life deals you, and they decide to have some cake together. As Jimmy returns with a knife, we find that the cake was a lie, and Curly has taken its place. Jimmy readies his axe and we're back in the cargo room, bottles of mouthwash strewn about. We can see from this sequence that Jimmy is losing it and is having some odd dreams about Curly. It's also reminiscent of another nightmare from earlier in the game. You remember, right? The one that happened right after the ship was set on a collision course with an asteroid? At this point, it became clear to me who crashed this ship. Our favorite psychopath, Jimmy. But if that's not enough to convince you, we'll get a direct confirmation soon enough. We return to Jimmy's perspective. The objective? Check on the crew. Swansea is completely drunk, dancing in the mess hall, making the most of his fate. Anya, meanwhile, sits quietly, contemplating drinking the mouthwash. She mentions that not all the medicine on the Tulpar was kept in her office. Some of it is just beyond the emergency foam, barely out of reach. Jimmy asks Swansea for the axe. Swansea obliges by smashing it into the mess hall TV. Jimmy takes the axe and carves through the foam, collecting the medicine along with some isopropyl alcohol. But the real moment here isn't the axe or the medicine. It's what happens between Jimmy and Anya. She showers him with praise, letting him believe it was his idea, his problem solving. He soaks it in, saying it wasn't so hard once he figured it out. But we know that's not true. The plan was Anya's, so why does she let him take the credit? We've seen how volatile Jimmy can be, and this feels like an attempt to keep him calm, to massage his ego. But it's useless. Jimmy launches into a tirade, listing everything he's done for the crew. Find the code scanner, figure out the door code, get the axe, chop up the foam, but not too much, and best of all, give Curly his fucking medicine. He makes himself a martyr, painting leadership as an unbearable burden. But by his own count, he's done about 5 things in 2 months. That's that YouTuber work ethic for you. And even then, most of those weren't even his ideas. Anya was the one who led him to the solution, and she still gave him credit. But Jimmy doesn't just want recognition, he wants control. The authority of being captain without the responsibility. After once again force-feeding Curly his meds, we're pulled forward in time. 6 hours until judgment. Jimmy locks the cockpit door. Swansea is on the other side, pounding against it, voice dripping with bloodlust. Jimmy scrambles, stacking whatever he can find against the entrance as Swansea hurls threats, hammering away at the hatch. Just as Jimmy secures the last barricade, Swansea smashes through the glass, and suddenly, we're 2 days before the crash. Back in Curly's perspective, He's in the mess hall with Anya. She tells him she finds the nighttime display relaxing, often coming here to look at it. She mentions a dead pixel in the upper right corner, but even when she tells Curly exactly where to look, he just can't see it. I wonder if that means something. Anya asks how much time they have left on their journey. 8 months, Curly replies. She then asks why the medical room has a lock when the sleeping quarters don't. Curly answers with a single word: safety. This scene is where it clicked. This is when I understood what happened between Jimmy and Anya, or more accurately, what Jimmy did to Anya. Let's piece it together. Anya is always skittish around Jimmy, her body language tense, her words careful. She hasn't been giving Curly his meds, saying it's because the noises he makes nauseate her. She specifically asks about the 8 months remaining on their journey. She questions why the sleeping quarters can't be locked, and later, we learn that she's pregnant. Jimmy assaulted her, and suddenly, her words to him take on a horrifying new weight. I have to believe that our worst moments don't make us monsters, Jim. That is an exceptional level of empathy, which, in my mind, makes Anya the most respectable member of the entire cast. And it makes Jimmy's cruelty even worse. His constant jabs at her competency, the way he needles her, erodes her confidence. The sexually charged jokes he made during their psych evaluations. It all points to the same kind of control he always enjoyed as the co-pilot of the Tulpar. The power without the responsibility. God, I fucking hate this guy. We're now 4 months after the crash, and Daisuke rushes to Jimmy with a panicked message. Anya is locked inside the medical bay. Jimmy calls out to her, and after a brief exchange, she admits the door isn't stuck at all. She locked herself in. It's clear that Anya intends to harm herself. She mutters that she should have done this from the start. Jimmy and Daisuke scramble to form a plan. They'll reach the medical bay through the vents in the utility room. But there's a problem. Swansea, drunk and slumped against the door, simply refuses to move. Before we can see how that plays out, we're flung forward to 8 hours before judgment. Daisuke lies on a makeshift cot, barely clinging to life. Jimmy, frantic, insists that he can still fix this, while Swansea, bewildered and furious, admonishes his delusion. He demands the isopropyl alcohol, but Jimmy used all of it. For what? That remains to be seen. Swansea insists there must be something else they can use. A desperate search begins, leading us to the cargo bay. And then, another nightmare sequence. An impossibly long catwalk, a monstrous horse-like creature stalking in the shadows. At the end of the path, we find yet another bottle of mouthwash. And just like that, we're yanked back to reality. Jimmy, without hesitation, pours the mouthwash over Daisuke's wounds. It does kill 99.9% of germs, right? What could possibly go wrong? Now we're back to the moment before Daisuke enters the vent. Swansea is still blocking the door, and Jimmy concocts a new plan. He'll mix a drink strong enough to knock Swansea out. The ingredients? Equal parts isopropyl alcohol and mouthwash, which, of course, explains why there was none left to treat Daisuke's wounds. And that raises an unsettling question. How does Jimmy even know how to mix something like this? What kind of person instinctively thinks to try it? When the walls close in and his mistakes come back to haunt him, Jimmy's true nature bleeds through. Swansea gulps down the cocktail without hesitation, and then immediately passes out. With the path clear, Jimmy unlocks the utility room. The foam that was supposedly blocking the area, gone. All but one of the cryostasis pods are destroyed. Daisuke assumes Swansea must have been trying to clear them out, but Jimmy sees the truth. There was never any foam. Swansea was just biding his time, waiting for everyone else to die so he could take the last pod for himself. After this revelation, we see that the vent to the medical bay is still accessible, but far from safe. Sparks flicker from the opening, the interior clearly hazardous. Daisuke hesitates, rightfully so. He knows he'll be injured if he goes through. But Jimmy pressures him, playing to his insecurities. Swansea will be so proud. Everyone is counting on you. You have to do this. But we all know how that ends. One day before the crash. We're Curly again. The objective is simple, yet chilling. Find the gun. Curly searches the Tulpar, eventually finding Anya in the cockpit. He's irate, demanding to know where she hid it, insisting that being fired isn't a reason to hurt herself. He brings up the fact that, as their nurse, she never got a psych evaluation, something he should have paid closer attention to, and he swears that he would do anything to help her. But Anya corrects him. She never planned to hurt herself. She hid the gun because she needed to keep it away from someone else. Then she reveals the dire news. She's pregnant. Curly is stunned. For a moment, he asks who could be responsible, but Anya simply says, "Captain, I told you." Curly goes quiet. He understands. "I've known him for a long time," he says. "I'll talk to him." Anya replies, "I knew you'd never give me the gun to protect myself, so the best I can do is make sure he never gets it." As Curly turns away, we're pulled back into Jimmy's perspective. 6 hours until judgment. Daisuke lies motionless, his body battered, his expression vacant. The mouthwash should have helped, so why does he look worse than ever? Think back to when the precious cargo was first revealed. Anya had inspected a bottle and immediately pointed out its sugar content, noting that it made the solution useless for treating wounds. It's a small, easy-to-miss detail on a first playthrough, but on a second, it stands out like a beacon. It also highlights something else, how little Jimmy ever cared about what Anya had to say. He dismissed her insights, brushed off her concerns, treated her like background noise, and in doing so, his incompetence has once again sealed someone's fate. Swansea kneels beside Daisuke. He tells him he was just a kid trying his best, and that he could have taught Swansea so much, but none of that will come to pass now. He lifts his axe, swift, merciful, and with that, Daisuke's suffering ends. Jimmy seizes the silence, turning on Swansea, accusing him of hiding the cryostasis pods, but Swansea just laughs. "You want the pod? Take it." Jimmy doesn't believe him. He storms into the medical bay, unlocked now, moving with eerie purpose. He knows exactly what he's looking for. And then we're greeted with a horrific sight. Anya's lifeless body lies on the floor, surrounded by empty pill bottles and streaks of her own blood. A smeared trail leads from the vent, the path Daisuke must have crawled. Jimmy barely even acknowledges any of it. He steps over Anya's corpse like it's nothing, goes straight for the emergency gun case, and inputs the code. As he lifts the gun, we hear laughter. Not Jimmy's, but Curly's. Hysterical, broken laughter. Why? What's so funny? This is the moment Curly finally completely understands. Jimmy is a monster. Not just a bad friend, not just a selfish man, a monster. When Anya first took the gun and told Curly what Jimmy had done to her, he dismissed her fears. "I'll talk to him. I've known him a long time. We can fix this." But then came the crash. Months of unbearable pain, trapped in his own body, unable to move, unable to speak. Jimmy forcing medication down his throat, violating his autonomy, and through it all, Curly was there, watching as Anya died. Anya, the one he was supposed to protect, the one he failed. Her final moments, and he couldn't even comfort her. And now, as he sees Jimmy again, his friend, the man he defended, the man he made excuses for, doesn't even hesitate. He steps over Anya's body without a care, and takes the gun. Curly's laughter isn't amusement, it's realization. She was right. She was right all along. Jimmy turns to see Swansea charge down the hallway, axe raised overhead, but before we can react, we're placed at 0 days before the crash. This is where we get to see Curly's final failure. Anya is on her knees in the medical room, distraught. She tells Curly that Jimmy knows she's pregnant. Curly wonders if Jimmy's angry. And that alone says everything. Deep down, he's always known what Jimmy is. Running through the ship, we find Jimmy standing just outside the cockpit. At first, Curly tries to placate him, saying they can still fix this, that they can work through it together. Actually, as I'm recording this, I just realized when Jimmy is like delusionally saying that they can fix things and they can still fix it, he's actually doing a poor emulation of Curly's leadership skills. So that's actually pretty interesting. Wow, I really like this game. Okay, back to the script. But Jimmy isn't convinced. He says that everything they've worked toward, their accomplishments, their changes, will mean nothing in the face of what Curly allowed to happen under his watch. Notice how Jimmy completely avoids the fact that he's the one who hurt Anya, that none of this would have happened if he wasn't such a goddamn loser. Jimmy presents an alternative. Let everything here, the crew, the Tulpar, be remembered as a tragedy. Let it disappear. Let them never be found. And Curly, he can still be remembered as their esteemed captain. At this moment, the perspective shifts. We're no longer Curly, we're standing behind Jimmy, and I think this shift represents how Curly has surrendered. He's no longer the decision maker, he's giving Jimmy control. Jimmy walks into the cockpit, simply saying, "I'll take care of it," and Curly lets him. Then, alarms, system failure. Curly runs for the cockpit and sees Jimmy inside, head in his hands. Curly stares at him in disbelief, saying he should have done something. At this point, should have might as well be carved into his tombstone. He should have stopped Pony Express from foisting Daisuke onto them. He should have paid more attention to Anya's mental well-being, and he should have noticed the dead pixel, Jimmy. But it's too little, too late. And as Curly tries to right the ship, it slams into the asteroid. 1 hour before judgment, we're Jimmy again, carrying Curly's limp body into the mess hall. Here we're subjected to a grotesque tableau. Ooh, another thesaurus word. The corpses of the entire crew arranged in some twisted dinner party. Curly is placed at the center, laid out on the table like the main course. Then the broken bodies around him begin to twitch, celebrating like marionettes on strings. As Jimmy's fractured mind imagines a conversation between these dead friends, we hear Curly's pain-racked sobs, sobs that cut through the hallucination like static. But somehow, unbelievably, it gets worse. Jimmy picks up an absurdly oversized kitchen knife and begins to saw at Curly's leg. The screen shakes, it warps, and Curly's screams drown out everything. Jimmy mutters about how he's always been jealous, how Curly's lowest rung was everyone else's highest. Then, with a dark tone, it's time to eat. A red, ruined piece of flesh on every plate. Then, a new transition. Take responsibility. It's another nightmare. We're now crawling through the same vent Jimmy once forced Daisuke into. The live wires, the jagged metal, we see exactly what tore him apart. At the end, Jimmy finds Swansea, tied to a chair. He picks up a gun, points it at his head, pulls the trigger, but the muzzle flash doesn't end it. It only sends us deeper into delusion. Now, a graveyard. A phantom Swansea stalks us. Jimmy has to shoot him again and again. And if you let Jimmy die here, you get an achievement called The Good Ending. But, unfortunately, that's not what really happened. We're pulled back to reality. Swansea tied to the chair, Jimmy standing over him, gun in hand. But rather than beg for his life, Swansea just starts to talk. He says the best days of his life were when he was a drunk, when his biggest problem was an empty bottle, a loving wife, great kids, doing everything a man is supposed to do. It all felt hollow. He knows what kind of man he is, the kind who could fall off the wagon, the kind who let it get in the way of what mattered. The cryostasis pod, he wasn't hiding it to save himself. He was doing it for Daisuke. But Jimmy still can't admit what he is. A cowardly, selfish motherfucker. Even now, even with a gun in his hand, still clinging to this deranged optimism, muttering, "I can fix this," and "everyone's going to make it." Swansea sums it up in two perfect words: fuck you. We enter yet another nightmare sequence. With Jimmy now fully severed from reality, we run through a hallway lined with Curly's single eye, endlessly staring. We see a terrible display, feeding Curly his own flesh, speaking to his burning effigy. He tells us he should have stopped Jimmy, that now he's taking responsibility. Jimmy falls to his knees and begs for forgiveness. He pleads that it was just an accident. They were trapped. They had no other choice. Even now, in the deepest recesses of his mind, Jimmy refuses to admit the truth. He always had a choice. He could have done the right thing. He could have taken responsibility for what he did to Anya. He could have faced the consequences, but he didn't, and he still can't understand how it's all his fault. Now comes the final nightmare. Jimmy performs a demented ultrasound, only to be chased by the horrid progeny of his mind, an unholy amalgam of flesh and plastic. The monster hounds him through the vents, but after surviving long enough, we eventually reach Polly, the object of his affection. It's in this conversation that Jimmy finally says it. He'll take responsibility. He carries the wheezing Curly down to the utility room, walks to the cryostasis pod, and places his former friend inside. As the door closes, we switch to Curly's perspective. Jimmy delivers a final monologue, how he's finally fixed things and how no one can hurt him now, meaning Curly. He walks off screen, and a gunshot leaves little to the imagination. The cryopod kicks on a full 13 seconds later, yes I counted, and if you're like me, that moment had you panicking, wondering if Jimmy forgot to turn the damn thing on. It would be in character for sure. But no, the machine works. Unfortunately for Curly, who is most likely begging for death at this point, he survives. Frozen, alone, for who knows how long, and then the credits roll. I want to make one final point clear. Jimmy never took responsibility. Not really. For all his late game bluster about fixing things, about making it right, he still chose the easy way out. He didn't face the aftermath. He didn't endure the consequences. He didn't suffer. He assaulted Anya and convinced himself it was actually Curly's fault for even letting that happen. He ignored Anya's warnings, dismissed her knowledge, and then stepped over her corpse like discarded furniture. He manipulated Daisuke, got him torn apart, and then let Swansea clean up the mess. He mutilated Curly, exploited his loyalty, and pumped him full of sweet little lies until all that remained was meat. And when the hallucinations came, when the walls of his own mind started cracking, Jimmy didn't seek redemption. He sought an exit. In the end, Jimmy didn't take responsibility. He ran from it. He is the perfect convergence of incompetence and evil. The kind of man who burns everything down, then dies believing he built something.